Okay, we're live. Welcome to another episode of Book Club with Kaiden Kelly. I am your host, Kaiden Kelly. I'm going to put my beanie on. Welcome. We're here back in action, baby. Here ready to I'm going to make sure this audio is working. Oh, it's not giving me audio. That's okay. But yeah, I believe we're on. I'm still trying to get used to this new. Yep, there we go. Now it's giving it to me. Give it to me. Yes. Welcome. We're back talking about books. Shit, I've forgotten how I used to do my intro, but I used to say, if you're a regular, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. That's not what I used to say. I forgot how I used to open this. We talk about health, wealth, peace, and purpose, and wisdom. Health, wealth. Oh shit, I've forgotten my intro, but that's all right. It's kind of a different show now anyway. So we do things differently. Pull up the chat. Let's see. There we go. So, but we were still talking about books. I still got my blog up and live, kaidenkellysblog.wordpress.com. And I haven't yet, but I have intentions to post some of my essays that I've done from school on my blog. And or not all of them, because they're not all awesome, but there's a couple that I was pretty proud of from my philosophy class. And yeah, mostly philosophy. The philosophy class had some awesome prompts to write about. So I'm excited to do that. But that has links to my social media as well. Anywhere you want to get a little bit more self-help stuff, that's my little platform where I just do a little bit. I don't do much because I don't have a lot of help, and not that I do need a lot of help, but no, it's just me, and I'm doing this, and I'm getting back into doing this regularly because it's important to me, and I'm still working on like the self-help, my own self-improvement, my own journey. I have not given up on my own journey. School is just a little bit of, it's a little bit of my own. It's not even off course. It is the course. Going back to school is pretty much the course. It's because it's what I'm doing. So I'm excited to be back. And I have this week, which is finals week. I've done most of my finals so far. I've got a little bit more to go. I've got an essay due on Wednesday, and I got a final test on by Thursday. Online classes is nice because I can do these things on at home pretty much anytime. And today was a unique day too, because today is day one. Today marked day one of starting my new medicine for my stomach. So I started taking Entyvio, and yeah, not nearly as invasive or troubling as I was expecting. That because everyone was telling me it's your first time taking drugs through infusions can be tough. You'll feel weary, you'll feel achy and sore and tired and nauseous, but so far, and I did that like 3 hours ago. So far, so good. And it was only a 30-minute deal. And they pumped those drugs in me quick. I'm really hoping that this medicine works. You know what I mean? Taking medicine, I've never wanted to take medicine. This is why I waited 5 fucking years to take any medicine. I learned recently my first diagnosis, or when I was originally diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, was 5 years ago, almost to the date. And I was really bummed out to learn about it, but I've also been really grateful that I live in a time, a day, and age, and a place where I have awesome medicine available to me, because not a lot of people have access to medicine. A lot of people live their lives as just being sick and deal with the consequences. And then colitis is tough. Colitis is tough in a lot of ways, like Crohn's is. And this medicine's supposed to alleviate like all of my symptoms. It's supposed to get me into remission. And one reason why I waited 5 years was because just kind of uh, happenstance, I got better after my first colonoscopy. I got better. And I thought it was because I started making all these lifestyle changes where I stopped drinking alcohol and I started eating clean and going to the gym, right? When I wasn't doing all those things uh, consistently, I thought, yeah, I fixed myself. But then I really, it was maybe like 6 months after after my first colonoscopy, I stopped doing those things. Started drinking again. I stopped exercising, yada, yada, yada. And I was just, yeah, it was a different time. It was before book club. It was before I was, I was kind of partying. And yeah, I was fine. I had no colitis issues for seriously for 3 years. And then I had uh, a flare. It was bad. And then it was like maybe another year before another flare. And then last October 2022 was when things started going downhill quickly for me. I would get sick, and then and then it would go away, and then I would get sick after like 2 months. And it's been like that for the last year, where I'd have a flare that would last about 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And then I would be fine for about 2 or 3 months. And then I'd be sick again. So it's been a wild roller coaster for the last year. And this medicine is supposed to induce remission, supposed to alleviate symptoms and induce remission. Because right now my colon is it's inflamed. It's been inflamed for about a year, which is wild. And I'm fortunate too. When I got hey, you didn't think you joined book club to talk about colitis and bowel issues, did you? But guess what? That's what we're doing here. I got a colonoscopy like a month ago, and yeah, she said, no cancer, which is great, but it's been inflamed. It doesn't look good, and left untreated. That's the kind of shit that turns into cancer. I think usually the process is an inflamed colon will develop polyps and sores, and those things can turn cancerous quickly. And so I'm just a sick person now, and I gotta do the colonoscopy every 2 years, and I need to do regular cancer screenings, and I got to take this medicine through an IV every 2 months. But again, I'm lucky that I have these resources available to me to help me not be a sick person. And I think I've said in the past, I thought for some reason that Marcus Aurelius was believed to have some kind of bowel disease too, but I tried finding the source of that recently and I couldn't find it. All I could find was that he died from the plague, and I think that's pretty well established, but there was nothing about him being constantly being a sick person constantly, or else like I couldn't find anything like that. So I think that's a myth, or maybe I made it up entirely. But his messages are still strong. That, I think it was from my philosophy final paper, where I was trying to use Aurelius as an example for how to live your life, how to be stoic with the sickness. But he had a lot of other trials and tribulations as well. He didn't need the colitis on top of it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I do feel I am a little more tired than normal, but I'm happy to be here to do the podcast. I've been looking forward to doing this because today I want to talk about a book I finished recently called Atheist Mind, Humanist Heart by Lex Bayer and John Figdor. Figdor or Figdor? Figdor. Figdor. I don't know. This was a book, interestingly enough, I found through doing homework. One of my classes is that how to use the library class, and what the whole point of the class was how to how to conduct research to find um appropriate articles and information to conduct or to do homework, to do research. And I anyway, long story short, I found this book through that assignment, and I read it in my free time in between, and I loved it. It's a relatively short book. It's like 120 pages. But it's awesome. Let me tell you about these motherfucking authors real quick. 130 pages. Lex Bayer serves as a board member of the Humanist Connection, a humanist, atheist, and agnostic nonprofit organization serving Stanford University in Silicon Valley. His foray into the philosophy and to the philosophy of belief began with an award-winning paper on religion while an undergrad at Stanford University. Lex is a technology entrepreneur and inventor holding more than 20 patents. As CEO and co-founder of his first company, he pioneered a payments platform that grew to service 5 million customers and was ultimately acquired by Visa. Probably heard of those guys, Visa. John Figdor is the humanist chaplain serving the atheist, humanist, and agnostic communities at Stanford University, where he organizes events and programs for both students and community members in the San Francisco Bay Area. Figdor and his work have been discussed in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, and the San Francisco Chronicle. He speaks regularly around the United States on humanist topics. He holds a Master of Divinity degree from Harvard Divinity School and was previously the assistant humanist chaplain at Harvard. I must have missed that last part, the second to last part. Holds a Master of Divinity degree. What the hell is that? Matt, I'm really curious. I'm gonna look this up. Matt, oh, Master of Divinity degree. What is a Master of Divinity? Uh, is this right? A Master of Divinity is more than just a graduate degree for those interested in becoming a counselor or pastor. Ah, this degree encompasses a multifaceted view of theology and history without the additional requirements of a doctoral degree. Okay, so that was probably necessary for him to become the chaplain, the humanist chaplain at Stanford. So that makes sense. All right. Let me go back. Um yeah, they joined together, wrote this book. They're both young, strapping fellas. There you go. There's the pictures of the guys. And I really liked it. So the subtitle to the book, and here's what we're going to be talking about: rewriting the 10 commandments for the 21st century. So these two guys, atheists or agnostic, but previously religious people, they uh, came together to figure out how to live in a world that we like today, that we live in today, with secular or humanist principles rather than religious principles. And this is an interesting topic to me. This book came at a really good time because for our topic for Thanksgiving, uh, centered around the paper by, oh, I'm never gonna find it. I don't know her name. She wrote "Why I Am a Christian" essay. Who wrote that? This was, oh my god. Why I Am Now a Christian? Was that it? Yeah. Ayan Hershey Ali. Ayan? Sorry, I don't know how to say that name. Ayaan Hirsi Ali. This was the this was the topic of our Thanksgiving because her story is very interesting. I'm very unfamiliar with her just learning about her through this essay that my mom sent to me. She was raised in Kenya, somewhere in Africa, I believe, and was part of the Muslim Brotherhood, uh, which again, very unfamiliar with. They're like a cult, and they subjected her to this belief system. So she was um raised in that and then eventually escaped to Amsterdam where she became an atheist and she became a pretty um prolific proficient atheist. She was became pretty well known. Her stories, again, I'm not too familiar with it, but I've heard it's incredible. And she's wrote about atheism. She became an atheist, and then just recently she's now talking like this article is why I am now a Christian, and the point her whole the my takeaway from her paper essay was she believes that it is only through Christianity that we can save the world and find peace in the Middle East and these kinds of things. She yeah, it's only done through Christianity. And I was pretty much saying at my dinner that I think that's a ridiculous claim, and I think that Judeo-Christian values are inadequate. I don't think they're horrible uh, compared to some other value systems that exist in the world, but we can certainly do better. And I think secular and humanist values will almost always trump any religious system or any religious values because and the biggest reason for that is because they are flexible. Humanist and secular values are flexible, and that's kind of the point of this book was they rewrite the 10 commandments for the modern world for the 21st century, but they aren't fixed. The whole point of the book was like this is just we this is just well, we chose 10 just to be consistent with the Old Testament, but we could have 5 or we could have 15 or we could have 500 values or quote unquote commandments. In fact, they call them non-commandments throughout the book. The 10 non-commandments. Yeah. So it's not humanist and secular values, I think will trump these Judeo-Christian values every time. Zach, this beard is looking good, bro. It's getting thick. You know how it go. If you don't know already, we are live, and I think we're going to be live every Monday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I'm going to be streaming video games here and there because we've been playing motherfucking Baldur's Gate, and that shit is so fun. Baldur's Gate 3. I've never played a game like that in my life, an RPG like that, and it's been so fun. And I'm so slow and unfamiliar with the entire system, but again, it's a ton of fun. I know. I'm probably not gonna lie. I have a paper I need to write. I need to work on that's due on Wednesday, but I think I'm gonna hop on Baldur's Gate for an hour or two after the podcast. So you can look for that there, baby. But hey, let me get back. Let me get back to this secular and humanist thing. So they call them non-commandments because we don't have uh there's no authority dictating um these or dictating or enforcing these belief systems or these values. And I also think that's kind of the reason why secularism doesn't work in our 21st century world, because there are so many religions that have quote unquote authorities to enforce their values. Um, so I it's it that was kind of my point at my Thanksgiving dinner was we can do better than uh the New Testament and the Old Testament. We can do better than that. We can do better than even like modern day revelation through Mormon prophets. We can do better. And her paper, yeah, was not it was unconvincing to me, but my family loved it. And it was a great paper. She writes really well. She writes convincingly, but um I was not convinced, and I'm still not convinced. And I think like to kind of wrap up that thought is I think that religious traditions and especially Judeo-Christian values are what's so funny. In fact, I got to plug the Alex O'Connor and Ben Shapiro conversation that was had just a couple weeks ago, because Alex addressed it specifically. Uh, Coincidentally, he was saying that Christianity actually takes credit for all of the advancements that have been made in society, socially, and like, and I wish I could just like play his clip for you, but he says essentially that uh, it was it was Christianity that um well, or rather, there is slavery in the Bible, but it took uh oh, I don't want to spoil. I can't really gather my thoughts on it. He says it really well though. His argument or his projection on the matter is compelling. And religions, yeah, I wish I was more prepared for this kind of argument, but religions, we can do better than religious value systems. Again, it's not like they're completely useless. Uh Part of what she argues for is the and by her I mean Ayan Hershey Ali. Part of what she argues for is we got to where we are in today's society because of these Judeo-Christian values. But that's what Alex O'Connor was arguing against, that Judeo-Christian values kind of just take credit for the success that or the progress that we've made in our society. But I'm getting too much into the weeds. Let's start going over this book. And I'm a bit embarrassed because I did not take notes on this book like I do for most of my books, because I wasn't doing the podcast while I was reading it. So I was still like highlighting and writing notes in the book, but I just recently went back through page by page to find what I had highlighted and what had stood out to me. So I know it's going to seem really imperfect. And none of these fucking episodes are that good anyways, but I try my best. I'm gonna put the argument together really well. More than anything, I want to go over their 10 non-commandments for the modern day, for the 21st century. So okay, let's see. Let's go. Yeah, we're doing quotes. So in the introduction, page 7, um, the authors say, this book is the result of our combined efforts to fill the void of disbelief that remains after a rejection of God by answering the questions: what should one believe after abandoning faith? And what are the positive principles of atheism? Our goal is to provide a clear and comprehensive framework of secular beliefs about life, human behavior, and ethics. We call our version 10 Non-Commandments for the 21st century. So yeah, if any of you out there who have abandoned your faith in God or lost your faith in God and don't know what to do about it, this is kind of the book for you. Or more so, if you've abandoned your faith in God, and you think, well, now how do I be a good person without a belief in God or without having Scripture to tell me what to do? Well, this is such an interesting argument to me, because uh, I I listened to so much content around objective morality and subjective morality, because if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe that there is an objective entity to create right and wrong and to enforce, not even enforce, but just to that has created what is right and what is wrong in the world. If that thing doesn't exist, then there is no right and there is no wrong in the world. And I I think that's the case. I don't think that there is an objective morality. I don't think that you can demonstrate that there is, because in order to demonstrate that there is objective morality, you need to demonstrate that there is a higher power. There, and it's not the God of the Old Testament, or not Buddha or Krishna or Allah, any higher power, any higher power at all. You need to demonstrate that that thing exists and that it's orchestrating good and bad in the world. And this is kind of, truthfully, it's a tough pill to swallow, because if there is no objective right or wrong, then there is, yeah, then like committing murder is not would not be objectively wrong. It's just wrong by our own standards and opinions, but it's not wrong. I mean, and if anything is subjective, um, then yeah, then it can't be classified as good or bad. But I think that's baloney, because yes, I agree with the idea that you can't it's that nothing is objectively right or wrong. It is all just kind of opinion. We still have our fucking opinions. We're still projecting our opinions. That's it. And just like with these university presidents over the weekend that are getting scalded for their testimony about how they could not say that calling for the genocide of Jews goes against their code and conduct for school. They're getting annihilated for that opinion. And it's and you know, there's a little bit of conversation to be had about free speech, a little bit. The obvious answer is that it's wrong to call for a genocide of Jews. It's wrong. It's just wrong. But I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to be the uh, free speech advocate, and to speak hard truths on university campuses and whatever. Like it's a crazy position to take. But what happens in our world, in a globalized world especially, is your opinions are getting judged all day by everybody, and it is kind of the collective that decide what's good and what's bad, and it is all just opinion. It really is just opinion. And some people make their decisions based on what their Bible teaches them, but um yeah, their beliefs and their view of the world is just opinion. So, yeah, these university presidents, I think one of them got fired already, and another one is contemplating stepping down, or I don't know exactly, but they said some pretty ridiculous things. They couldn't. It's just crazy to me and to the public that they couldn't say plainly that calling for the death of Jews, the genocide of Jews, is wrong and shouldn't be tolerated on their campus. And they said, well, it's context dependent. And if it invokes action, then it can be wrong. It's context dependent. It's baloney, dude. It's fucking baloney, I think. So yeah, so when you put out a bad opinion, like, so you say, someone says, oh yeah, well, if there is no objective morality, then if I cheat on my partner, then there's no God, there's nothing to dictate that was a bad decision. It's your opinion that you think it's wrong. Well, you know what we do value, and something that they talk about. I'm jumping the gun here, but because it hurts other people, it can be agreed that it's something that we shouldn't be doing. And that's not always the case. It's not the case every time in every instant or with every decision, but it is a good rule of thumb. That's how we it's how we make our decisions. It's how our society functions. We create rules and we follow them, and then if there are bad rules, enough people will object to them, and that doesn't mean that rules are objectively good or bad. It just means that rules, or it means that we are creating the rules. We're creating the system that exists, and it is a subjective system. And I really don't think that there is, and one, like, a common objection to it is that I can't imagine a world where there is no recompense for evil doing. And yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, but just because it's tough to comprehend doesn't mean that it's not reality. It's not the reality that we live in. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's jump back into the book. Part 1, a framework for facts. So chapter 1, rewriting the 10 commandments, is pretty much a recap of the introduction. They just say we're uh yeah, I didn't take any notes. Again, I didn't read this book planning on talking about it on the podcast. So there's probably lots of juicy shit that I'm jumping over. But from what I remember, chapter 1 is about their intention to reframe the 10 commandments for a secular world for the 21st century. Chapter 2, the paradox of belief. Page 20, we choose what we want to believe. All right, page 20. If we can't justify these source beliefs, how can we figure out which source beliefs are the right ones? How do we know it's this belief and not the one inside the next fortune cookie? The usual answer is simple. We choose the beliefs that we want to be true. But if we really care about justifying our beliefs, that's hardly enough. We'll have to wrestle with the paradox. Yeah, what's the context to that? Why did I underline that? I did write in the margin that all beliefs begin with assumptions. Um, here they outline 3 basic assumptions. We propose to develop a coherent framework for factual belief. We need to accept 3 core principles. An external reality exists. Our senses perceive this external reality, and language and thought are tools for describing and understanding what our senses perceive. Yeah, they're setting the framework for this first commandment. And I'm trying to work out the logic behind it by skimming through my notes. I did say on page 26, or I did underline rather, we will deal more with how we should process the information our senses receive, and how to deal with the conflicting information about what to believe later in the book. At this point, it's enough to say our senses are the only source for ascertaining what is real and what is not in the external reality, despite their deficiencies. Yeah, I argued for this too in one of my philosophy papers that because John Locke, who's he's the guy that says I think therefore I am. His whole meditation book, not his whole, but part of what he's famous for is insisting that there might be a reality beyond what we can comprehend, and that our decisions are being influenced by some external factor, and we won't know. We can't rule it out because we can't prove it. We can't prove that it's not happening, right? He argues that what if all of my actions and thoughts are being influenced by a devil? And I will never be able to confidently say that it's not happening because I can't prove that devil does not exist. Now, proving a negative. Um, and it makes sense to say it. Like, I can't, you don't know that you're not being influenced by a devil. I don't. We could all be being influenced by a devil all the time, but we can't prove that we're not, so we can't say that we're not. And it's kind of like with God. Like, we can't prove that God's not there, so you can't say that he doesn't exist. But that it's an interesting stance to take. And I responded in a paper saying that you can determine some things, and what we can determine is that we experience the world. And like Locke says, he doesn't talk about physical things. He says that he thinks, therefore he exists. I think the best way and like what they're trying to set in stone here in the book is the only way that we can or the most reliable tool that we have to understand reality is through our senses, and it's just because of our biology. We all we have is our eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and touch. Or sight, smell, taste, hear, and touch. That's how we interpret the world, and then we uh, contemplate our interpretations with our brain, and that's it. So, and I think that takes us to the first commandment, the first three commandments. Yeah. The first non-commandment is the world is real and our desire to understand the world is the basis for belief. The second is we can perceive the world only through our human senses. It's true. We can't even comprehend how to perceive the world through different senses because we don't have those fucking senses. And the third non-commandment is we use rational thought and language as tools for understanding the world. And the entire chapter and the entire book is designed to support these commandments. So if you're interested in it, of course, I suggest go read the book, Atheist Mind, Humanist Heart. Okay. Yeah, they talk a little bit about the metaphysics of the world is real, and part of what's come from John Locke's work is maybe we live in a simulation. Like, there's no way to prove that we don't live in a simulation, right? And yeah, I'm not going to sit around and argue that we don't live in a simulation. And I don't think an intellectually honest person would, because there's no way to prove that we don't. There's no way to prove that we don't have spirits and that there's no God. Like proving a negative it's I think it's impossible, right? Is that wrong to say? So yeah, we live in a world. We're trying to understand the world through our senses, and then we interpret our senses through thoughts and language communication. Chapter 3, the reasoning behind reason. I didn't get any notes from this one. I think they're more reinforcing the first three uh non-commandments, the use of science. Yeah, they talk about the scientific method, collecting data. Very nice. Oh, they do add a fourth commandment, though. Almost missed it. Oh, but I want to talk about it in chapter 4. It says my notes. Okay, well, then I'm not going to say it yet. Chapter 4, beliefs about the unknown. Page 40, they say, the more you multiply probabilities in a single function, the smaller the probability of the function becomes. In other words, assuming all things being the same between two different theories, the more principles on which a theory relies, the lower the probability that it will be true. Actually, I remember Sam Harris trying to explain this to somebody that the more depth that you give a theory, and he was talking about specifically about a god, the more depth, the more claims you make about that god, the more you try to describe what that god is, the less likely that god will be true. It's just a statistical analysis. And again, I sound annoying, but I'm gonna say it. I wrote this semester about how there might be a higher power, but the more you try to define that higher power, the less likely that thing is likely to be true. So I'm pretty skeptical that the Christian God, the God of the Old Testament exists, but I'm even more skeptical that the Mormon God exists. But I'm less skeptical that there is a higher power. I'm actually not entirely convinced that there's not a higher power. I think that it's like, again, it's trying to prove a negative. I think that one thing that theists say is one of the classical arguments for the existence of a god is um relates to creation, the creation of the universe and Big Bang and what came before the Big Bang. And I think we don't quite know yet. But that doesn't deduce that there is a God or that there was a creator behind it. Again, that's not logically sound. But until science can prove otherwise, I'm not entirely sure, because this is an interesting roadblock in my opinion. Back in the day when people used to think that it was a god that was causing the sun to rise and set every day, and that if they didn't pray to that god that the sun wouldn't come up, shit like this, or that disease was caused because of displeasing God, or famines were caused because of displeasing God. But then science revealed that those things occurred because of X, Y, and Z, and not because of some divine intervention. I find that the origin of the universe is slightly different, a little more interesting, but not entirely unique in this sense. The creation of the universe is one of those. It's and this is why it's so interesting to listen to physicists talk about it, because my stupid brain, and I think most people truthfully see the creation of the universe on a time scale where there was creation at zero time, and then over, I don't know, 7 billion years, we're at where we are today. In fact, I don't even know how old the universe is. I'm going to Google it real quick. How old is the universe? 13.8 billion years, according to starchild.gsfc.nasa.gov. Measurements made by NASA's WMAP spacecraft have shown that the universe is 13.77 billion years plus or minus 0.059. So 13.8 billion years plus or minus 59 million years. The age was further refined by ESA's Planck spacecraft to be 13.8 billion years. So we see, and this will logically put the universe on a linear time scale. But when I listen to physicists talk about the creation of the universe, they talk about how time slows down and time warps, because don't you know that time is relative? And that it's not that linear. And um of course, we don't know what existed before the Big Bang, what happened exactly at the Big Bang that caused it. And people will say it was God that sparked it. Like, I'm not saying that God did that, but what I am saying is, if nothing existed before the universe, where did it come from? And is it illogical to um, assert that there was some divine intervention that caused the Big Bang? Now, again, this sounds like, and this is why I can't fully embrace it, is because it sounds like um, an apologetic view for how the sun rose, or where disease came from, or famine back in the old day. We didn't quite understand what was causing these things, and so he said maybe there was some divine intervention. Maybe there was some God that was orchestrating these things. Um, we can confidently say why these we don't know how the universe got to where it is, but we know that there is no God causing the sun to rise. In fact, we are the ones moving around the sun. The sun is stationary, and we are the one. It's not entirely stationary. That's not true, because it's hurling through space, but it's not rotating around the Earth. The Earth is rotating around the sun, right? So, yeah. So back to what I was saying, the creation of the universe, God, um, that one is tricky to me, because it's not like you can say, oh, we can't confidently say yet. At some point, hopefully, humans will figure it out. But right now, we can't. Like with the sun, we're like, oh, so God isn't causing the sun to rise and fall. It's because the Earth is rotating around it. That makes sense. There is not, like, I can't even imagine. I can't even begin to think where I like to even make up another origin story for the universe. I can't even make one up. besides something caused it to happen. Again, it's because of all of our naivete. We don't have and maybe there are some physicists who are getting close to cracking the code. I don't fucking know. I don't know of any other theory. I don't know how you can even come up with a logical theory for the creation of the universe. I can't even think of something that makes sense. Where all matter existed in a single point of nothing and exists. Anyway, but this is why science is beautiful is because if we were to examine something as fascinating as that, as the claim of the creation of the universe, and we gave up and said, well, I was saying science is beautiful because we can observe something like that and we can continue to study until we can realize what the truth is. I mean, wasn't it in like the 80s where the leading theory for the origin of the universe was the steady state theory, that everything that exists has always existed, it's just changed forms? But it was because of what I just read that where scientists are able to depict and determine that there was at one point a starting point, that all things originated from a single starting point from the Big Bang. So theories and science updates theories, and we continue to test those theories until we land on something that makes the most amount of sense, that is the truth. And we're just not there yet with the origin of the universe. And I can't I hope in my life I hope so badly in my lifetime that that's something that's figured out, because I want to know. I really want to know, like so many other people. Okay, let's keep going. What was my next? No, I think it was okay right here, 45. So we're still talking about beliefs about the unknown. Let's see. We favor simplicity because simpler evidence tends to produce more accurate predictions. With the lottery ticket scenario, all tickets are equally unlikely to be the winner, even the actual winner, because no evidence can be produced in advance to favor picking one ticket over another. This leads the fourth commandment to be all truth is proportional to the evidence. All truth is proportional to the evidence. So this summarizes their establishment of reason and knowing things. Oh, I missed a quote over here. Favoring simplicity means our current knowledge should be favored over inventing or creating new phenomena to explain inconsistencies or puzzles. Yeah, like being an apologetic for a specific a certain kind of belief. If we want to understand reality, we should we should figure out the most accurate depictions of reality instead of trying to make excuses for what we want to believe to be true. So, in as a recap, the first four commandments are: the world is real, and our desire to understand the world is the basis for belief. 2, we can perceive the world only through our human senses. 3, we use rational thought and language as tools for understanding the world. And 4, all truth is proportional to the evidence. Now let's tackle the question of God, as if we haven't already talked enough about him. Chapter 5, the assumption of a God. Page 53. They say, simply put, there is no observable evidence to corroborate a belief in the existence of a God. Yeah, I mean, I say it plainly, and am I going to justify it? They say a little bit beforehand. They give some bullet points saying, by the same logic, you cannot confidently bet that God is all powerful or eternal, because either of those choices would be betting on a single attribute from many alternatives. Where does this leave us? Combining the answers from the above questions, you might conclude that it's more plausible that many gods exist. Those gods have the disposition of the gods your family has historically believed in. Those gods hold no special powers above the laws of nature, and those gods are not completely just. They But they say, since this is a question about existence, we can use the framework of belief we've already elaborated in the previous chapters. When we do that, we can see that a belief in God is inconsistent with the system of belief we've already proposed for two principal reasons. One, there is no observable evidence. And that's where my quote comes from. There's no observable evidence to corroborate the belief in the existence of a God. But Kaiden, look at the trees around you and look at the complexity of life. Where did all of this come from? This is one of the classical arguments of God, for the existence of God. Right? We don't know where it all came from. We can't entirely explain how these systems function. Again, I'm a dumb person. I don't understand everything, or I don't understand most things, and um, I'm befuddled on how chemical reactions happen and why they happen, and it is just a law of nature, right? Why, how these little, like, I can't even think of like a chemical reaction as an example, but that's what I was trying to do. That's why I was stuttering. I can't even think of one because they just don't make sense to me. How oxygen is two atom oxygen particles put together, but uh, ozone is when three oxygen particles combine together, but then explode or something. And that's, I don't know. It's all a mystery to me. Why those things behave why chemical reactions behave the way they behave. It's a mystery. And someone could explain it to me. I'm sure there's a YouTube video to explain why chemical reactions happen the way they do. But that's my example. Someone might say, well, look at the complexity of life. Well, just because we don't understand it does not directly uh, conclude that your God or a God exists. It just means that there's a lot of things that we don't understand and that need continual investigation. So I think it's dishonest and it's irresponsible to say, well, we don't understand where something came from. And I guess I'm going back on my words a little bit about the Big Bang, but I think it's dishonest to say we don't understand why why something happens or where these things come from or how these functions function. So it must be some divine intervention. I think it's dishonest, right? But I think I saved my skin a little bit by saying that we can't. I can't explain why the Big Bang happened. Maybe there was some divine intervention, but I'm not. I am not. I would never advocate for that. I'm just saying there's no way to prove that there wasn't either. You know. And then the second point for what to do. That uh, shit. We can see that a belief in God is inconsistent with the system of belief we've already proposed for two reasons. There's no observable evidence, and the religious lottery. They say, let's be honest, while we can debate for forever the merits of how to justify a belief in God, the real reason people tend to believe in God is not because of the existence of corroborating evidence or because of logical reasons for such belief. No, people believe in God out of faith, or to put it into terms we've been using, people believe in a given religion because they choose it as their set of starting assumptions. A religion is assumed to be true, and only then does a whole system of belief and behavior emerge from that assumption. In short, God is an assumption, not a belief. If your starting point, and this is me now, if your starting point is there is a God, then you're going to justify um, that existence by, that's where apologetics come from. You're going to say, well, God exists, and I can't explain the complexity of life, but so it must have been God. It must have been His divine ways. They say the fewer assumptions we have to make to explain reality, the more likely the assumptions we do have are valid. Again, it's a statistical thing. It doesn't mean that those things aren't true. It's just a statistical game where the more claims you make, the less likely that thing is to be true. It doesn't mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean that you can't use all of those reasons to make one really, really specific claim. It just means especially with guessing. If you're going to guess on a specific thing, the more assumptions you make, the less likely it is to be true. So this leads us to our fifth non-commandment. There is no God. Woof. Pretty rough, right? But not really. It's actually pretty liberating when you can put a stringent belief aside and observe reality through a different lens. That's been one of my favorite parts after leaving the church, is figuring out the nature of reality as we can observe it, and not just by how religions tell us that it is. Again, like, religions will say we don't know how the complexity of life, and that's what I don't know. I actually don't know if it's in the Bible, but I can think of the Book of Mormon. One of the stories of the Book of Mormon is, look at the complexity. Is that the teleological argument? What is um the complexity of life as an argument for the existence of God? It's it's either ontological, cosmological, or teleological. So let me. Sorry, I just took a whole class on this, and I can't remember which one's which. Define ontological argument. No, that's the greatest thing that you can conceive. I think it's teleological. Teleological. The argument for the existence of God from the evidence of order and hence design in nature. Yes. Look at how complex life is. It must have been designed. Yeah, that's the teleological argument. I can remember a story in the Book of Mormon where, Joseph Smith was thinking, look how complex life is. There must be a God. And that stems from an assumption that there is a God to begin with. But stepping outside of that frame and observing reality and saying, look how complex life is. Let's try to figure it out. Let's see what the evidence points to. And you can get again, this is how we figured out that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. Is that the earth revolves around the sun. Is that we stopped uh believing complicitly in the existence of a God moving the sun around the earth, and people conducted science and this employed the scientific method to figure these things out. That's why it's so valuable. We're moving on though, so I'll go over all of the commandments again in a minute. Part 2, a framework for ethics. Nope. Yep. A framework for ethics. Chapter 7, from beliefs to behavior. From beliefs to behavior, page 68. I got a quote. They say, returning to the question we posed earlier, what motivates our behavior? We now have an answer. Our behavior is motivated by our desires, and these desires are in turn based on an urge to maximize our own life happiness. Simply put, all behavior is motivated by a yearning for happiness in life. All behavior is motivated by a yearning for happiness in life. And again, I'm cherry picking their argument. But this is their conclusion. This is the conclusion of their argument from their premise, and whatever. That we desire to live a happy life. All of us do, and that's what influences our decisions. And this goes back to what we were talking about with morals and ethics. Is there some spirit in us compelling us to do good or compelling us to do evil, or are we reacting to our environment? Are we reacting to our biology, trying to do things that feel comfortable and feel peaceful, and also earn us status in our community and in our tribes, that get us laid and get us money and get us safety and all of these things that we deem valuable. That's where our behavior is motivated. It's motivated by all behavior is motivated by a yearning for happiness in life. Let's keep going on this. On page 71, they say, okay, so here's a summarization. They say we use experience, rational thought, and interactions with others to form expectations about what will make us happy. Much of the rational thought involves speculating on the likely outcome of our actions. And then they say combine these expectations with the motive for happiness, and we're driven to action. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. We're getting close to the end of this episode, but you can apply that those steps with what those university presidents were doing or were arguing for in Congress. They were well, yeah, okay. I'm actually going to drop it. I don't want to get too much into it. I've got more to talk about. So they say, with these insights, we now have a more comprehensive answer to the main question of what motivates our behavior. Behavior is motivated by our beliefs about how best to increase our life happiness. And these beliefs are based on our experiences in life. Of course, it doesn't cover the entire frame, but it is the basis. They say our inner emotional struggles are simply mental struggles over how we see our future selves and what we want our future life happiness preferences to be. I don't have enough context on that. I'm going to move on. So, non-commandment number 6, they say we all strive to live a happy life. We pursue things that make us happy and avoid things that do not. Let's keep going on this. Chapter 8 is how ought one behave? How ought one behave? Chapter 8, page 80. They say it's at the psychological level, not the atomic level, that the notion of choice has descriptive power and meaning. And it's true. There's a little frog in my throat. And it's there at the level of human psychology that we're all aware of our ability to act as independent agents, to align our actions with our intentions, and to make decisions and choices at the psychological level, not the atomic level. Yeah, it's at the psychological level, not the atomic level, that the notion of choice has descriptive power and meaning. It's there at the level of human psychology that we're all aware of our ability to act as independent agents, to align our actions with our intentions, to make decisions and choices. Yes. Okay, so yeah, it's like where it's how we process our consequences. Because our anatomy, our biology might make us feel hungry and feel sadness and things, but it's at the psychological level that we interpret these things, that we interpret what it means to feel lonely and to feel happy and to feel all of those things. Page 89. This is all in italics, so it's got to be important, right? They say there's no one way we ought to behave. We choose to behave in the way that we think optimizes our life happiness. Interesting. This is a bunch of I'm starting to remember this is a bunch to do with free will. Not enough time to get into that right now, but I'm kind of, talk about, can you derive an ought from an is? Like if it is wrong to kill somebody, so you ought to not kill somebody. Can you derive that an ought from an is? Can you conclude that that's a reasonable argument or that's a reasonable position to have? And again, it comes down to free will, I think, and morals and the existence of morals and an objective morality. And they're saying no, that there is no you cannot derive an ought from an is. There is no one way we ought to behave. We choose to behave in the way that we think optimizes our life happiness. Like this, because there is no objective morality. There's no one way for everybody to live. There's no right decision that is right across the board for every time that situation comes up. There is no the non-commandment number 7, there is no universal moral truth. And then chapter 9 is more on this. Chapter 9 is moral happiness. They say, um, they give an example, tell a story. They say this example is a glimpse into how we form all of our behavioral preferences. The mechanism that creates Pete's food preferences is the same process that creates his broader preferences, including his moral preferences. His preferences are a combination of his personal tastes, experiences, and influences. It's both nature and nurture. That's what influences our um, tastes, experiences, and influences. Let's see. That was 93. Got another one in 95. Cooperation often leads to greater personal happiness. Punishing others who don't cooperate serves to preserve a world of cooperation and remind people that it's in their best interests to cooperate. And this reminds me, I'm rereading Righteous Minds by Jonathan Haidt, and that little section reminds me of what I just read. But yeah, but in this room again, it goes back to the university presidents. They're learning that where their opinion falls with the opinions of the rest of people of the rest of the world, if their opinions are good or not. And for the most part, they're not. Most people are completely reject that they would even try to defend these claims that calling for the genocide of Jews, even in speech alone, is tolerable. They say we choose to be moral because of the happiness it brings us. I'm cherry picking their motherfucking claims, but that's what we do is we cherry pick the good info out of these books. They say acting out of rational self-interest and identifying with others leads often to moral behaviors. We follow our life happiness preferences not out of some moral imperative, but because that's how we inherently behave. It's not overcoming our nature, it is our nature. Subjective ethics frees us from the trap of believing that our own happiness is moral or immoral. Instead, our own happiness is amoral and a natural part of the human condition. Yeah, there is no objective morality. So that leads us to non-commandment number 8. We act morally when the happiness of others makes us happy. Chapter 10, societal happiness. I got a quote on 155. I'm sorry, 105. The mere fact that our opinions and your opinions are both subjective doesn't mean we can't sensibly debate between the two. On the next page, they say we aren't committing ourselves to the absurd perspective that all moral views are equal, only admitting that there isn't one absolute moral opinion. Yeah. Subjective doesn't mean without reasons. You might just convince us that your reasons are a better fit even for our own self-interests. Yeah, because if we behave in a way that makes us happy and someone comes along and convinces us that, hey, you'll feel better if you get 8 hours of sleep, or you'll feel better if you stop eating pizza for every meal. You'll feel better and you'll live a happier life. You can argue their position back and forth. You can go back and forth on it, but there are better ways. I don't know. I want to say there are objectively better ways to live than others, but they're all subjective decisions at the end of the day. If you choose to eat pizza for every meal, so I guess some people can tolerate that. Like that would actually probably kill me. I would actually probably die. And so, but some people can tolerate that. Some people's bodies don't freak out like mine would. So it is still an objective choice. But I do think, and I think what a nutritionist would argue is that your energy levels will be higher, your libido will be better, your focus will be better, your a bunch of things will improve as far as like how you feel if you have a well balanced diet instead of just eating pizza for every meal. Um, but if you don't care about those things and the only thing you care about is eating pizza every day and for every meal, then yeah, I don't know. It's a subjective choice. Is it wrong? No, not necessarily. Non-commandment number 9, we benefit from living in and supporting an ethical society. And then chapter 11 is putting an ethical beliefs to the test. This is the chapter where they have like a dialogue. They go back and forth where one of them interviews the other. And at one point, Lex Bayer says, "We didn't say that pursuing one's happiness is moral, just that people do in fact pursue their life happiness, their own happiness. Life happiness is our main motivation. Morality, on the other hand, is about how much happiness one gets from others, from the happiness of others." Let me read that again. "We didn't say that pursuing one's happiness is moral, just that people do, in fact, pursue their happiness. Life happiness is our main motivation. Morality, on the other hand, is about how much happiness one gets from the happiness of others." That's very profound. And then here, maybe I'll finish this, what they said. He says, "The Boston Marathon bombers, Tamerlan and Zokar, whatever, were most likely following their happiness preferences, which valued the advancement of their cause, a deeply misguided form of Islam, ahead of the lives of those affected. But by no means does that equate with morality. I read about, I continue. I read about statements on one of the bombers, on one of the brothers I'm sorry. I read about statements one of the brothers wrote on the inside of the dry docked boat in which he was hiding. They reflect his motivations. He wrote things like, 'We Muslims are one body. You hurt one, you hurt us all.' And now I don't like killing innocent people. It is forbidden in Islam, but due to unintelligible, it is allowed." That second phrase could be appended to many of the most heinous acts of immorality in human history, and the justification is indeed often unintelligible to others. Acting morally, as we describe in our eighth non commandment, means deriving happiness from the happiness of others. Clearly, the brothers were prepared to inflict pain on others and so acted as in an immoral way. Yeah, their dialogue is pretty interesting. It's a pretty loose conversation. But this leads us to the 10th non-commandment, which is all our beliefs are subjected to change in the face of new evidence, including these. Uh Hey B Moons, I fucking love my Chef Boyardee every day. I had pizza tonight. I definitely couldn't do it every night. Oh, that was Zach. You had pizza tonight. Definitely couldn't do it every night. Yeah, dude. Well, I'll tell you what. Happy Moon's one of those guys. He survives on Chef Boyardee and Cup Bop every day and fried rice. And I had one pack of fried rice the other day, and I had diarrhea for 3 days. So, but I'm also sick, and I'm taking this medicine, so maybe I can go back to eating pizza every night. But yeah, all of our decisions are based on what we think will make us happy, and they go into a lot of depth on morality and ethics. Maybe not a lot of depth, but they use it in their framework or in their argument to create this framework. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can improve. And this last point was what I had started this podcast with, is we can improve our framework of belief, our morality, by being willing to reconsider what is best for us and for other people. Again, the 10th non commandment is all our beliefs are subject to change in the face of new evidence, including these. and they close the book with a quote by G.K. Chesterton. They say, "So we can correct GK's. I'm sorry. We can correct G.K. Chesterton's famous assertion: when a man stops believing in God, he doesn't then believe in nothing. He believes in anything. Instead, we can say with confidence, when a man stops believing in God, he doesn't then believe in nothing. All beliefs are instead based on reason and evidence rather than faith." And that's the end of the book, pretty much. Chapter 12 is how to write your own 12 or your own 10 commandments, and uh, which is honestly a really good exercise that I should spend some time doing. I just haven't done it. They have an awesome appendix. Well, I think it's going to be awesome. I haven't read it, but it's around common religious objections. So some of the subtitles are a unified view of God, Pascal's wager, miracles as evidence of God's existence. Um, yeah, more claims on, or more ways to examine why people think there is a God, psychological comforts of believing in God. So I didn't read it, but I sounds awesome. That was Atheist Mind and Humanist Heart by Lex Bayer and John Figdor. Figdor. And honestly, it was a really good book. It's short. I probably could have read, anybody probably could read it in just a few hours, but it took me most of the semester because of all of the other shit I was doing. But you know, I've dedicated a certain amount of time every day to reading and doing homework and shit. So I am engaged. I will have content for these podcasts every week, but it's not always going to be a book. Now it's going to be shit like, um, it's going to be shit like what I learned in psychology and philosophy and anthropology and whatever things to discuss, because it's good. There's lots of good. Maybe I'll just go over some of the essays that I'm supposed to read. Like I read a ton of essays in philosophy on all of these topics, on free will, on objective morality, on each of the ontological, teleological, cosmological arguments, all of these things that are incredibly fascinating to me. Anthropology I'm interested in. It's just harder to talk about. I'm so much less familiar with. Like every other week, we would write a claim on. Good pod, my boy. Missed the first half, but I'm here. No, dude, you're good. I hope you figure out what's wrong with your feet, because that sucks when you go running and your feet go numb. Um, yeah, I don't know much about the anthropology world, but we would read an article on, like, you know, certain things that are like the newest claims in anthropology. Like one of the more recent ones, papers that I did was, what was it? I think it was about if Neanderthals had religious traditions. But so much of it is speculation, because it's you can't always prove empirically these claims with ancient civilizations and old humans from tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago, or sometimes millions. So anyway, we're good. You know how it go. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, yeah, 6:30-ish to 7:30-ish to 8:30-ish. We'll be recording these motherfucking podcasts. So tune in next time. Go to the blog, check out the blog, Kaiden Kelly's blog.wordpress.com, to get uh all of the fucking info, to get all of the links to all of the other stuff. And tune in next time. We'll see you then.